actively resisting the transfer of heat into the center. This is exactly why the guide insists that drumsticks require significantly longer frying times than smaller, boneless pieces or even wingettes. It mandates around 10 to 15 minutes of sustained, highly controlled medium heat.
10 to 15 minutes is a long time in hot oil.
It is, but the thermal energy needs immense time to conduct slowly through the exterior crust, through the outer layers of muscle, all the way into the center without the exterior burning to ash in the process.
And the guide even tells you what to look for if the examiner hasn't provided a thermometer, right? The meat should be totally white or opaque, zero pink coloring. The juices running out should be completely clear, not bloody. And the chicken should feel physically firm to the touch, not rubbery. But it reiterates that 165 degrees Fahrenheit internal target. You simply cannot mess around with that metric.
No, it is the absolute binary pass-fail metric of the entire assessment. If it is 164 degrees, you fail.
So we fry them, we pull them out, and we drain them on a wire rack. And the guide issues another warning here. Do not cover them with a paper towel or a lid. Because if you trap the radiant heat, it turns into steam. And that steam will completely hydrate and destroy the architectural crunchy coating you just spent 20 minutes building, turning it into soggy mush.
Exactly. Let the steam escape.
Right. So we've got our golden lollipops resting safely. We quickly whip up the final S sauce. It's a very simple emulsion of 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise, 1 tablespoon of ketchup, a few drops of that highly acidic calamansi juice, and a pinch of pepper.
It's a very standard functional dip, essentially a variation of a Marie Rose sauce that provides rich fat, simple sweetness, and sharp acidity to cut through the heavy richness of the deep-fried chicken.
And we plate it. 2 perfectly engineered lollipops. The bone handles are clean. There are no unappetizing puddles of oil on the plate. And just like with the carrots, we have a psychological anchor. The rhythmic mantra to get you through the fire, the oil, and the fear of undercooked meat. Say it with me.
Cut, push, marinate. Flour, egg, crumbs, medium fry, drain, sauce.
Cut, push, marinate. Flour, egg, crumbs, medium fry, drain, sauce. It's almost hypnotic when you repeat it.
It centers you.
It really does. All right, we've mastered the geometry of the knife. We've conquered the violent thermodynamics of the deep fryer. Now, the assessment protocol takes us to our final and perhaps most technically demanding piece.
And this one requires a totally different kind of neurological mindset.
Yes, we're moving from the aggressive, violent heat of boiling oil to extreme subtlety and patience. We are talking about the delicate science of dairy emulsion.
We are looking at the macaroni in carbonara sauce task, specifically a Filipino-style carbonara, which heavily utilizes cream and processed meats. And the cognitive memory code here is PSCCS, pasta, sauté, cream, cheese, serve.
Let's start with the base foundation, the pea pasta. The yield is tiny again, 3/4 of a cup of cooked macaroni. The guide instructs you to boil it in salted water until tender, but it gives a very specific visual and textural warning. The macaroni should look plump and fully cooked, but absolutely not broken and not sticky like paste.
Because macaroni is such a small, physically delicate pasta shape, the window of starch gelatinization is incredibly narrow. The difference between perfectly al dente and disintegrating mush can be a matter of 60 seconds.
Really? Just a minute?
Oh yeah. If you overcook it, the starch structure collapses. The moment you attempt to fold it into a heavy cream sauce later, the physical friction will cause the pasta to shatter, turning your elegant dish into a thick, unappetizing starch pudding.
Okay, so we have our perfectly cooked, carefully drained pasta resting. Now, the protocol asks us to set up a specific organizational structure. It calls it a pasta parade.
I deeply appreciated this psychological and organizational note in the text. It asks the candidate to physically visualize and arrange tiny bowls lined up in sequential order on your workstation. A bowl for chopped onion, a bowl for minced garlic, a bowl for meat bits, the measure of cream, the measure of cheese, and finally, the macaroni itself.
It's mise en place.
Right.
The French culinary philosophy of everything in its place. But why is it so hypercritical here?
Because it is a form of cognitive offloading. Once you apply heat to a pan and begin building a delicate cream sauce, you absolutely cannot abandon the stove to quickly chop an onion or grate some cheese.
You can't just turn your back for a second.
No, the chemical process moves too quickly, and the thermal windows are far too tight. If you turn your back, the sauce breaks. The parade ensures all ingredients are within arm's reach.
Right, which brings us to the actual cooking, the sauté. We place 1 teaspoon of butter or cooking oil in a small pan. And the heat management here is just as critical as it was with the buttered carrots, low to medium heat only. We add our chopped onion to soften, and then our finely minced garlic. And the guide lays down a fundamental law of savory cooking right here. garlic, onion, meat equals flavor.
It is the absolute baseline of building a complex savory profile. You are utilizing the natural aromatic compounds in the alliums and combining them with the rich umami of the proteins.
But the massive danger hiding in this step is the garlic. The text issues a stern warning. Do not use high heat. Garlic burns quickly, it becomes bitter. And if you burn the garlic in a single serving dish...
The assessment is effectively over before the sauce is even built.
Exactly.
Garlic contains high levels of sugars and sulfur compounds. When it burns, it doesn't just turn brown. It releases incredibly acrid, harsh chemicals. Those chemicals are fat-soluble. Yeah, this means that when you eventually add the rich cream, the fat in the milk will instantly absorb and trap that bitter, burnt garlic flavor, permeating the entire sauce. You cannot rescue it. You cannot add water to dilute it. You have to throw the entire pan out and start over, which you almost certainly do not have the time or ingredients to do.
The margin of error is absolute zero. Okay, so we've carefully managed the heat. We gently soften the onions. The garlic is fragrant, pale, and not brown. We add 2 tablespoons of finely chopped meat, ham, bacon, or chicken bits. The meat acts as the savory foundation, providing salt and fat.
Right.
If it's raw chicken, the protocol notes you must cook it fully. If it's bacon, you crisp it to render the fat. If it's pre-cooked ham, you merely heat it through. So we have our flavor base established safely. Now, we hit the most volatile, chemically precarious step of the entire recipe. The first C, cream.
We add exactly 1/4 cup of all-purpose cream, or if unavailable, evaporated milk. And the guide emphasizes a vital instruction in bold underlined text: lower the heat immediately.
Yes. Let's talk about why. When I read the visual description warning against aggressive boiling, it clicked perfectly for me. If you're listening, think about it like this. Boiling delicate cream aggressively on high heat is exactly like revving a car engine in neutral while sitting parked in your driveway.
That is a great analogy.
Right. It feels like you're doing a lot of work. It makes a massive amount of noise, but it doesn't actually get you to your destination any faster. In fact, all you are doing is putting immense stress on the machinery and eventually breaking the engine.
That is a remarkably accurate mechanical analogy for what is happening at a molecular level. Dairy emulsions, like cream or milk, are highly delicate balancing acts. They consist of tiny droplets of fat suspended in water, surrounded by complex protective proteins that keep them separated.
Okay, so fat, water, and proteins.
Yes. When you subject cream, especially thinner liquids with lower fat content like evaporated milk, to an aggressive rolling boil, the rapid expansion of water turning into steam creates violent kinetic energy. That kinetic energy literally smashes those protective proteins apart.
Oh, wow.
The proteins denature, they curdle and clump together into tiny white specks, and the unprotected fat droplets merge together. You are left with a split sauce, a thin, watery liquid with a greasy slick of oil floating on top, and a grainy, unpleasant texture.
Revving the engine just blows the chemical gasket. The protocol dictates that the visual goal is small bubbles at the edge, a barely there, gentle simmer. You are providing just enough thermal energy to slowly evaporate some water and thicken the emulsion, but not enough kinetic energy to physically break the bonds.
Exactly. You are gently coaxing the sauce together over time, not violently forcing it with heat.
So we have maintained our gentle, stable simmer. Now we add the second C, cheese. 1 to 2 tablespoons of grated cheese. The text notes that cheese will slowly melt into the warm liquid, turning it into a rich, silky sauce. But here is where we run into a massive, invisible trap in this specific recipe: the cumulative danger of salt.
This is a classic devastating pitfall in high-level culinary assessments.
The guide instructs us to season the sauce with salt and pepper, but it issues a huge red flag right next to that instruction. Ham, bacon, and processed cheese all contain heavily concentrated amounts of salt.
They are essentially preserved sodium-rich ingredients by their very nature.
Right. And remember the primary constraint.
Yeah.
We are building a sauce for exactly one person. The text provides a vital philosophy. You can always add salt, but you cannot remove salt. If you are operating on autopilot and you blindly toss in a heavy pinch of salt just because the recipe generically says season to taste, you might suddenly find you've created a biochemical disaster.
Yes, the natural salt from the bacon has compounded with the salt from the cheese, and your extra pinch pushes it over the edge into inedible territory. One extra pinch ruins it permanently, and again, you cannot dilute it.
So you have to be careful.
It requires the candidate to maintain an active critical palate. You cannot just follow the steps mechanically like a robot. You have to actively taste the sauce and adjust your seasoning based on the specific, unknown salinity of the bacon or the specific brand of cheese the examiner provided you that day.
Okay, disaster averted. We tasted carefully, we seasoned gently. Now we arrive at the final step, plating and the final S, serve.
Okay.
But the protocol doesn't just casually say mix them together in a bowl. It is incredibly specific about the physical folding technique. You must gently add the cooked macaroni into the pan of sauce. You do not dump the sauce on top of a bowl of macaroni.
It is entirely about controlling the coating and the viscosity. You want the rich emulsion to enrobe the pasta evenly on all sides.
The text describes the exact textural target. The goal is for the sauce to actively cling to the surface of the pasta, not slide off and create a thin, watery pool of soup at the bottom of the bowl. When you stir the pasta in the pan, it should move smoothly with a rich sound. It should not splash like a liquid. It is a highly specific textural metric for success.
And then we are given our final cognitive anchor, the chant for the carbonara.
Pasta drain, sauté flavor, cream low, cheese glow, mix and serve.
Pasta drain, sauté flavor, cream low, cheese glow, mix and serve.
Okay. We have successfully navigated all three high-stakes recipes. We survived the rolling geometry of the carrots, the biological jeopardy of the chicken, and the delicate chemistry of the carbonara emulsion.
We made it through.
But here is where I want to take a massive step back. I want to look at the meta layer of the source material we've been digging into. Because if you really look at it, this guide isn't actually just telling us what to cook. It is explicitly outlining how it expects a human being to learn, process information, and execute complex physical tasks under extreme psychological stress.
We are moving entirely out of the realm of culinary technique and directly into the field of applied neurobiology and psychology.
Exactly. Let's look closely at these acronyms again. B, B, T, T, C, S, C, F, S, P, S, C, C, S. And beyond just the letters, the protocol constantly demands that the reader play what it calls a tiny assessment movie or a slow-motion cooking demo in their head.
Visualizing it.
Yes, it demands that you close your eyes and visualize the entire process. The jumping glass beads of boiling water, the sleeve of raw meat physically sliding down the bone, the tiny bowls lined up in a parade before you were ever allowed to touch a single ingredient.
It is an incredibly robust and well-documented utilization of mental visualization techniques.
When I read that section, I immediately thought of elite professional athletes. You see downhill Olympic skiers standing at the starting gate, their eyes are closed, and they are physically swaying their bodies as they meticulously visualize every single turn, drop, and jump of the race before the starting gun even fires.
Or commercial airline pilots running through a rigid verbal pre-flight checklist.
Right. It's not about figuring the process out in the moment. It's about flawless execution of a pre-programmed sequence. But I have to ask you, why is the physical act of verbalizing the chant so critical? The guide explicitly instructs the candidate to say this out loud 5 times before the assessment begins. Boil butter season. Cut marinade coat fry. Pasta sauté cream cheese. Why 5 times? And why must it be spoken out loud?
To understand the necessity of the chant, we have to deeply examine cognitive load theory and the neurology of stress, which are the underlying biological principles this guide is actively hacking.
Okay, lay it on me.
When a human being enters a highly stressful environment, like a timed assessment with a silent examiner hovering over your shoulder with a clipboard grading every twitch of your hand, the brain's amygdala activates.
The amygdala.
Yes, this is the primitive fear center of the brain. The fight or flight response kicks in violently. The endocrine system floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline.
So the panic response takes over. Tunnel vision, sweaty palms, racing heart.
Exactly. And when that acute panic sets in, your working memory, the part of your brain responsible for holding and processing new, complex information in real time, essentially plummets to near zero. The brain actively diverts blood flow and resources away from the prefrontal cortex, which handles complex problem solving and fine motor control, and prioritizes raw, immediate survival.
Just survival.
Right. In a kitchen setting, this neurological shift means you suddenly, inexplicably forget if you already added salt to the pasta water. You completely blank on whether the chicken goes into the dry flour or the wet egg first. Your hands physically shake, ruining your knife work. Your internal clock and sense of timing completely evaporate.
It is the human equivalent of a computer's blue screen of death. The system just crashes.
Precisely. You become cognitively overloaded. The data is too much for the panicked system to process. What these highly structured rhythmic mantras do is completely bypass the need for the the prefrontal cortex to actively problem solve in the moment.
How so?
They give the panicked, overloaded brain a pre-laid set of indestructible railroad tracks to follow.
Railroad tracks.
Yes. When the wave of cortisol hits and the stress spikes, you don't have to try and actively remember how to butcher and cook a chicken from scratch. You don't have to stand there debating the thermodynamics of oil or the moisture barriers of flour. You just have to remember 5 simple letters. CSCFS. You just have to recite the nursery rhyme you practiced. Cut, push, marinate. Flour, egg, crumbs.
So it's automatic.
Right. The chant reduces the cognitive load of the entire recipe down to almost 0, and the physical rhythm of speaking the chant unlocks the deeply ingrained muscle memory you built during practice. You let the acronym drive the car automatically, while your conscious brain manages the panic and keeps you breathing.
So this protocol is effectively programming the candidate. It's like downloading a software update into their brain to completely override their hardware's biological panic response.
That is exactly what it is doing. It is an ultra-fast memory code, just as the guide literally names it. It is structurally designed to be neurologically bulletproof.
That is truly incredible, and it really brings this entire exploration full circle. We started this deep dive thinking we were looking at a simple, basic guide for one-serving cooking exam recipes.
But we found so much more.
We really did. What we actually unpacked was a profound masterclass in controlled physical execution and psychological manipulation. We went from mastering the precise geometry of a carrot to prevent rolling disasters, to the structural architectural engineering of breading a chicken lollipop, to manage moisture, to managing the highly delicate volatile thermal emulsion of a dairy cream sauce.
And all of those complex physical and chemical tasks are entirely governed by strict, rhythmic mental programming designed to defeat human panic and cortisol.
Exactly. It's been an absolute wild ride through the mechanics of a high-pressure kitchen and the human brain. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
This survival guide proves that mastering a highly complex, high-stress physical task relies heavily on distilling that massive task into small, manageable, rhythmic mental codes. It proves that you can conquer the absolute chaos of boiling water, flashing oil, dangerous raw meat, and ticking clocks with nothing more than a simple 5-letter acronym and a practiced mental movie.
So here is the question for you to take away into your own life. If a culinary candidate can completely bypass the neurological terror of an examiner using an ultra-fast memory code, what other overwhelming challenges in your daily routine could you master by writing your own? Whether it's freezing in terror before a massive public speaking engagement, managing a sudden, chaotic crisis at your workplace, or even trying to navigate a highly difficult, emotionally charged conversation with a loved one, what is your personal BBTT? What is the specific rhythmic chant you need to write for yourself to get your panic brain back on the tracks when the pressure suddenly...